Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the GothamChess Slow Run. This is episode number 17, and in case you need a reminder or you're watching for the very first time, I am playing on an authorized account on chess.com, playing rapid games, taking you through every phase of the game, explaining my thought process, and so on and so forth. In the comments section of episode number 16, previous episode, I asked you, do you like when I play ruthlessly? Or do you like when I show you something and say, this is probably the best move, but at this level I doubt this would happen, etc. And the results were extremely mixed, as always. So I will try to please each and every viewpoint as we progress up. In this episode, we are making our final descent to the 1000 land, the 4-digit land. Games have started to look much more logical, although they are still sprinkled with some blunders, but opponents are playing quite well. They're putting good pressure on us. Openings are getting a little bit better. And so we will try to continue the trend in this episode. As always, if you want to take your chess to the next level, you can get Chess for Babies. You can get the chess deck. You can get How to Win at Chess, Book 1, How to Win at Chess Next Level, coming out October 2026. You can check out Chessly on a free trial. There's a lot of ways to improve your chess, or you can watch every episode of the Slow Run several times, and so on and so forth. In the last episode, I played a couple of gambits. That's what I did. I played 2 gambits with white that went d4, well, that started with e4 and then went d4, giving up a pawn. But this time, maybe I will play a scotch. I will continue to kind of shuffle through my openings. Opponent opens with the move d4. I have played a Dutch defense. I will also show you how to just simply respond with mirror image queen's pawn, d4, d5. And now we have a queen's gambit. I will now play an opening that I have not played yet. And we will keep an openings tab as we go through this slow run. So the Queen's Gambit is designed to deflect a pawn out of the center of the board to give the full center with the knights and everything. However, one of my most successful openings and one of my best counters to the Queen's Gambit is the Queen's Gambit accepted. We see here the opponent is immediately going for this maximum type of setup. Now, here, the best move for black from a practical standpoint is to strike back with the move e5. It immediately attacks the center, yes, and then this usually happens. And then what we do here is we develop the knight to f6, counterattacking this pawn, and then when white defends it, we can already secure a very, very nice advantage for ourselves by simply not allowing them to win our pawn back so easily. So this pawn is under attack, and you see there, we do in fact have the starting position. After pawn takes, many people also play this move, knight to c3, and so after dc4, e4, e5, d5, at this point already, knight f6, knight c3 can be quite pleasant for black if we simply play bishop c5 and bring this knight to g4 with various attacking possibilities. Bishop b4 should be avoided because here there is a check, and this is a very, very common way to lose material early in the game. Instead, we will play this move b5. So b5 looks like it simply loses a pawn because the knight can take, but right now the knight needs to guard the center, right? It needs to guard the pawn on e4. And so now we have defended against the Queen's Gambit being countered. This move does not do particularly much of anything, so we just play the move a6, and suddenly, white is never winning their pawn back. So we are just up a pawn with the black pieces. a4, very logical move. Actually, super smart move. Trying to get us to take this pawn and then split our defense and double our own pawn. Also, with our rook here stuck in the corner, if AB happens, AB, we would be losing the rook. But we can just push this pawn. That's the difference here. We can push the pawn, and then we would be attacking the knight. This is still relatively logical play, I would say, from the opponent. It is probably the most natural move to advance, although then we will have to see how to defend the pawn on c4 if we were just to kind of mindlessly trudge forward. Another move that you might be looking at in this position is the move bishop to g4, which attacks the queen. I think if you've picked up on this move, then obviously you have quite good understanding of chess. I'm going to do something creative. So in this position, I am going to defend this pawn like this. The point is If white takes, and we take with the knight, suddenly our knight is activated in a way where it can jump all the way to d4 and cause some serious problems. On top of that, it can jump to d4 and then potentially to the c2 square. So we have some very bad intentions for the opponent in this position, where it just looks like we're just going to be swarming in with our knight and so on and so forth. While this pawn, this pawn is definitely, it's capturable, but we would be losing material if we did that. I'm also looking to play bishop g4 now, by the way, because bishop g4 now would attack the queen and force it away from this diagonal. It's a very, very sharp position, and I do have to start playing a little bit faster. My opponent is playing at a very fast pace, so I will jump my knight into the middle of the board on d4. Queen g3 played very quickly, which unfortunately just blunders this move. And you got, and just, oh my goodness, what? I feel like at this level, people play so well, but one move can just still change the whole game. Because I was just explaining, like, if my opponent goes back to d1, stopping this, like, let's analyze this position, okay? So, what's incredible about this position, it's that it's a mate. It's a mating position. Many people would just take the rook, and I don't blame you. However, in this position, before you take the rook, if you throw in the check on g4 now with the bishop, black is mating in a few moves. Here, this looks like a checkmate, and it's really important to see how all your pieces coordinate. The pawn is defended by the queen comes in, but the queen would take, which is fine because you would trade the queen and then you would win the rook. In fact, that's very good because you would be trading your opponent's most active piece. However, by playing the move bishop to g4, you force one of the pieces to go to f3. And even if it's the pawn, queen d3 comes in, king f2, and now here you have to find a nice way to coordinate the rest of your pieces because this is not mate. And you would be tempted to take the rook, but your queen is hanging. So what do? You have a bishop. And this absolutely ruthless attack on the king concludes with a devastating checkmate. We've now won 64 games, by the way, which is the amount of squares on the chessboard and which is probably the amount of brain cells I have remaining. Let's go back to the position before my opponent played the move queen g3. Had the opponent gone queen to d1, I still cannot take the pawn on b5 because I would be losing my rook. I cannot take the pawn on e4, right? So a natural move here for black would be to just develop the bishop to b7. The point of this move is that you defend the rook. And so if white were to take on c4, here you can take on b5. You can maybe take on e4. You can also develop another piece. Now we have 4 pieces developed, all the knights and bishops. We are ready to castle our king. We have a big lead in development, and we are putting a lot of pressure and a lot of strain on the white position, since now this is protected. What really made all of this work was the fact that the Queen's Gambit, and I do have a course on this, I will put it in the description, the Queen's Gambit accepted is a very tricky opening for white to actually handle, because it looks like white is just going to get everything they want, and if they are well prepared, they will, but generally they just kind of autopilot. In fact, the most common move is knight c3, and now I simply recommend a6, immediately trying to keep the pawn. So if white plays e4, you just play b5, and there's plenty of positions where white just doesn't win the pawn back at all. And that's very unpleasant. And what I showed in this game is how quickly white can just land in a worse position. Look, both sides have made 5 moves, and it's minus 0.8. And this is the main line at amateur level of the Queen's Gambit accepted. By amateur level, I do mean something like under 2,000 and mostly like 1,400 to 2,000, because up until about 1,400 online on chess.com, people are not playing like the main line Queen's Gambit. And the other point of e5 against e4, I did not play e5 against other moves. I played it against e4 specifically, is that if white takes on c4, you just win the pawn back. And if white takes on e5, you remove white's right to castle. So white's king will just be stuck in the center now, and I would just play knight to c6 here, attacking this pawn. And if they play knight to f3, I would pin the knight, and then I would long castle, develop my bishop, quickly win this pawn back, and black is just better. The best way for white to play here is probably something like f4, but there's a lot of variations here where you can just attack the center with a pawn, You get two knights. They both attack the center. The bishop comes out. The bishop comes out. The rooks come to the middle after you castle. And you just have a very, very, you know, nice position, I would say. Right? So everything is quite comfortable here. And life is good. So e5 is a very nice move. And it's particularly effective against e4. It also works against e3 to play e5. Where it doesn't work is against knight f3, because then, of course, you would just be losing the pawn. But against knight f3, you can play a6 and b5, and the queen's gambit accepted can be very tricky. The alternative is to decline it with something. Another alternative against the queen's gambit is to play some counter gambit, like the Alban, which is not terrible. It's certainly one way to play, and maybe I will show it to you at a later moment. But for now, we keep moving forward. You know, I try to explain my thought process quite logically here. You know, I played this move c6 to get my knight into the game, but a lot of things would have been okay here. I could have continued b4, knight here. You know, this pawn might have been lost, but I could have pushed it forward maybe, finished my development, etc. Yeah, keeping an eye for what our opponents want, not making any one-move blunders, and we move along. Let us begin with e4. The French defense. Okay. A lot of ways to play against the French, but as always, the most principled is two pawns in the center of the board. And I have played a few French defenses where I just simply played the advanced French. You know, another alternative is to take or to protect the center pawn. This is the classical variation. This is the Taraj variation. I like playing like this because you occupy space. You don't allow the opponent to put the knight on f6, and then you just build your center like this. Everything holds together. So we're going to develop some pieces. We're going to see how well my opponent knows the opening. Bishop d7 is what is considered the main line. It's very normal. And now I will develop my bishop. Now, the best way to develop the bishop here would be to d3. The problem with developing the bishop to d3, let's see if my opponent knows it, is that after a pawn trade, my opponent will quickly win my bishop. That's what's the point. So really, the bishop should go here. But let's just actively develop the bishop here. Let's not go here. There's no need. You don't need to trade the bishop for the knight. You're not accomplishing anything. And now let's quickly castle our king. So this is what we've accomplished. Okay, the opponent is actually playing very reasonably. Like, will they? Okay, so clearly black knows the ideas of the opening, which is bad for us. Now, if I try to save my bishop here by playing to e2, black comes into c2, which is how I won the last game. So you have to learn these little patterns, right? So we're just going to develop, and we're going to give the bishop to the opponent. The opponent can take my bishop. Fine. And now I take back, and now I'm curious to see how will black play this position. So we have a symmetrical pawn structure, for the most part. Yeah, this is correct. You should develop your knight to c6 or to f5. And look, at this point, the checklist for me is, have I developed all of my pieces? And the answer is no. I can develop my bishop somewhere. Let's go here, putting pressure. If we're attacked, okay, we're not attacked. The queen went out to b6. I was considering taking, but the queen comes to b6 and attacks this pawn. Normally, defending this pawn is, I mean, I can defend it with the rook, for example. I can also push it. Defending with the rook is a little feeble, in my opinion. I think it's like very passive. But to be honest with you, I'm not really sure what else we can do. But okay, you can just push the pawn one square. Just keep in mind that if you push the pawn, your knight now loses a guard. And this is significant, right? Like, this is an important thing. So maybe we will put the rook behind the knight to make sure the knight is more stable. The other problem with the French defense, which is what we have played into with white, is that because the structure is so solid, and black has played correct chess, we don't have a very natural next move. Like, I don't know what the next move is here. Maybe we go knight to a4, attacking the queen. Where do we move this bishop? Where do we move any of our pawns? Yeah, that's the difficult thing, you know? And generally here, what I say is, like, you can play tennis. You can just play moves like h3, which just don't do anything and don't weaken your position in any way, shape, or form. You can play moves like knight h4, offering trades. Like, as long as you're playing solid moves, you should be fine, but you kind of also want to get yourself in a position where your pieces have free flow. Like, you just kind of, you know, they go to the squares. Let's go knight a4. This move is not particularly impressive. Black can take it and damage our pawn structure. But by doing this, and that's what they did, they have given away a bishop. And I'm not sure that was a particularly good decision. Like, the queen could have just moved, right? And by making that trade, attacking the queen, we've opened up lines for our rooks. Okay, so here we have a perfect example. The bishop went to b4. The automatic move here for me would be rook to b1. Why rook b1? Because we are pinning the bishop to the queen. The opponent could think it's protected. And yeah, by the way, they still, made a move protecting it. But now, at the end of the line there is a pawn. And if we add pressure to this bishop, like in the form of maybe pawn to a3, suddenly we're going to win the pawn on b7. Suddenly something has happened in the position, like we opened up the queen side. And every time, things happen on a chessboard, you have to think how other pieces are impacted. And so, like, this move comes in. I don't see another way I can create a threat. Queen b5 is a check. But that would just be a trade. So why don't I just take a free pawn? I mean, that can't be a bad move. Right, now black should castle. Black has not castled yet. Has not castled. Okay, there it is. And so now we have this position, right? I still have not gotten all of my pieces into the game. My rook still hasn't moved. Another thing that has not happened is I have not given my king any breathing room in the position. So it would be nice to play g3, h3 at some point. But one thing you should consider is, does my opponent have any threats? And there is one. I mean, my opponent, even on the last move, could have taken my pawn on a4. And they didn't do that. And now you can play queen b5. And queen b5 is a nice move because what it does is not only protects this pawn, if there is a queen trade, you undouble your terrible a-pawns, which are just standing on the outskirts of the board doubled. And furthermore, the queen stops guarding this pawn. So when this trade happens, we are potentially winning this pawn on a7. This is what's going to happen in the position. Okay, and I like taking with the pawn because the pawns should be standing together. They should be holding hands. Okay, so the quick autopilot move is a4 in this position. The bishop is attacking the pawn, but actually rook takes pawn defends that pawn. And so you could autopilot, but if you actually, pause for a moment, you're like, wait a minute, now I'm up 2 pawns out of nowhere. Rook a8 is a very smart move. I'm 2 pawns up, which means, what should I do for the rest of the game? Well, probably I should go win the endgame, because we are in an endgame now. That's another thing you have to consider as the game is kind of going through its phases. If we trade the rooks now, and quite simply start advancing this pawn, or this pawn, which will be harder, we will just get a winning position. So look at this move. I'm going to play rook b1. I'm attacking the bishop, which is not exactly hanging if black plays the move rook a3, because there was back rank problems. But now we will start advancing. The best move was rook a1, which we will look at in a moment. But we just go b6, and we're going to push the pawn all the way to b7. This is our 1 extra pawn in this endgame. And I will show you how to promote and convert a position where you have an extra passed pawn. And the best move, like I said, the best move was probably rook to a1, because this would have frozen these pieces, and that is high-level piece understanding, positioning. And we will study that, because the endgame is the most underappreciated phase of the game at all levels, and I'm not sure even at the 950 level, 960 level, that people would be playing a move like rook to a1, just freezing the structure there. Okay, black has settled down for a long think now, which is certainly funny that this late in the game you go for this deep of a think. But it makes sense. The position is not particularly simple. Okay, bishop to e7. Of course, I can just push my pawn. That looks pretty natural. I'm going to do that because this cannot be a bad move. Right, rook b8. Okay, now, when you have a rook blocking a pass pawn, and you have other pieces, you would like to get your pieces to positions that remove this rook. So when I think about the easy trade of bishops, that doesn't really help me. I do think, like, what if I did something like this? That just looks completely lethal, I have to tell you. Right? The alternative is getting the knight to c6. It would be really nice, or a6. It would be nice if my knight can go gallop, gallop, but it can't. And so I find this nice little maneuver. Also, when you have just a rook, the rook can go to c8, defended by the pawn, hitting the rook and the king. The problem with that maneuver is that you would lose the pawn, except sometimes there is a back rank checkmate. More on that later. Let me finish off this maneuver. And this maneuver literally will win us the game because we will remove the defender. My opponent might try to stop bishop c7 by playing bishop d8, at which point we take and we promote the b pawn. This is game over, of course, because we are now just up a rook. How do you convert a position like this? You attack the pawns. You need to win several more pawns, and then you need to win the game. You can also sacrifice the rook for the knight. Fine. You're going to have a tough time here, so just make improving moves. Push the pawns all forward. Bring the king. Right? Bring the king, bring the pawns. Okay, every trade helps us, so we are happy to do that. Let's go rook b8. Let's try to struggle a little bit with this conversion. Okay, we're going to go rook g8 attacking this pawn. Black can just come defend it. It's not going to be easy. And if you go rook f8, you're going to hang the knight. So what do you do? Okay, let's just push a pawn. See, it's not completely straightforward sometimes. Okay, now the rook is hanging, so we got to move the rook. I would go far away. Black is probably going to give a check or bring the king back to h6. Black goes back to h8. Like I said, the easiest thing to do here is just take the knight. Just get rid of the knight, and now you have a knight versus 4 pawns. And so this is easily winning because what ultimately happens is Black doesn't have enough moves anymore. So what'll happen is something like this, where the pawns just cannot be defended anymore. They have to be advanced, at which point you can take and just take. And now Black will lose the pawns, and Black will lose the game because you will just eat the pawns and promote a queen. Just make sure you do not stalemate. You can even sack the knight for the remaining pawn. And Black just threw in the towel here because there was, and this was a very good game. There was obviously no way to save this, provided that we didn't stalemate. You will also notice I generally have about 3 minutes in every endgame. Granted, you will not be sitting there explaining your thought process, but you cannot play an endgame like this with low time on the clock. Like, you ultimately have to make decisions, even if you are not sure that they are the best decisions all the time. Okay? This is a very important thing. Okay? Now, French defense. Here we see a perfect example of why an opening is important. I knew nothing about the French defense. I played this as a 900 who just very vaguely knows what I'm supposed to do in the French defense, develop some pieces, and play normal chess. But Black is better. So Black just straight up, maybe not after queen b6, but like from the opening, I thought Black just had a very, very comfortable position. Maybe I mean, the move knight a4 is nothing, right? Black has a very, very slight advantage from the opening. Now, as you improve at chess, what will happen is you will know certain plans against certain openings. So against the French defense, you will have a line that you play. And in that line, you get a certain type of position. In the advanced French, very often, you have a position with more central space where Black tries to attack on the queen side. And so that is why you don't develop the bishop to d3, because you know that they try to do this. Until then, until you actually learn specific stuff against specific openings, if you just play good, relatively principled chess, taking the center, putting out knights and bishops, making good trades, good things will happen, right? You have to, every move, anticipate and see how the position is changing. So with the bishop going to d3, and my opponent basically implementing the full effect of the French defense, I still had to adapt. I played this move b3, Black went here. And at this point, several things are happening. First and foremost, in every position, you have to think and know, is it closed or open? And that is purely decided on the structure and amount of pawns. Since we have 7 pawns each, generally speaking, the position is going to be closed because both of us have a big fence, 7 out of 8 pawns. Where are the cracks in that fence? Over here, obviously. Like, this is kind of where we're sort of clashing. Otherwise, this is sort of deadlocked. In a closed position, the impact of the pawns is felt much more, and pawn breaks and infiltration spots are very important. And what that means is if white could somehow generate a pawn attack here with h4, h5, this happens a lot in the French defense, they would have a very good position. If black can play the move f6, crack open the center after castling, push back the white pieces, white is going to lose the grasp on the center. When I went knight to a4, the best move for black was not to trade. If anything, it was to trade my queen, because without my queen, I will struggle much more to lead any form of attack. And generally, if you have the bishops, the pair, you should try to keep them. You will notice that they will really benefit your position when they are together and the opponent does not have them. This trade opened up my files. And that's how that's how the transformation of the position occurred. Still, black here should probably play a move like bishop to e7. This move looked good, and many of you would attack it with a pawn, but it's much better to pin the piece and activate the rook from behind two doubled pawns. And very quickly, black got a bad position. Black allowed way too much, right? And queen takes a4 would have been a nice move, but this bishop is also precariously placed because my rook can come, pin it to the rook on c8, and suddenly black's position is totally out of whack. Totally out of whack. Black castled, though. And here, the top computer move by white. You ready for this? It felt like what I did was very logical, right? Black wants to play queen a4, I want to play queen b5, so the best move here for white is h4. Same side pawn attack against the opponent, because h5 is coming and the knight is completely uncomfortable. The knight is going to have to go to h8, which is miserable. And then white can play bishop to e7, attacking the rook, and then white can play knight g5, and out of nowhere, black is literally getting checkmated. Black is going to have to push pawns forward and, allow queen h3 and queen h7, and just like out of nowhere, white conjures up this enormous kingside attack with knight, bishop, rook from the side, and the reason for this is generally the side with the space advantage toward the king has very decent attacking chances. When you have a space advantage that restricts piece placement, and pieces that are standing outside of the opponent's structure can be targeted with a pawn attack, even on the same side, this pawn goes forward, you think, oh, I'm pushing pawns in front of my own king. Yeah, but what are any of black's pieces going to do to you? Nothing, because they're sort of over there, right? And this is high-level chess. Now, in the game, I went queen b5, and I made this trade, and I showed you how that still improves white's position. And then when black went here, suddenly I'm up 2 pawns, and naturally we have to invest on this side of the board with our rook, with our pawns, etc., rook behind the pawn, and this is perhaps the most instructive moment. The best move here, okay, it's close between these two, but this is a really annoying move for black, because black's bishop is relying on the defense of the rook, which neither one of them can move now. And the bishop is also pinned to the rook, because it can't move, the rook would be taken. So you're threatening something like bishop to c1, simply winning the game. And if black were to play a move like rook a5, to meet bishop c1 with a bishop move, that would then lead to this position. The benefit of rook a1, rook a5 is, well, you can just push the b pawn. Nobody's stopping you now. Bishop b4, this is fine. You can even take, play b7. The bishop will be permanently stuck protecting this, and we need to escort this pawn over there, either with the bishop or with the knight. So we begin the knight journey. This knight comes back. We begin the knight journey to b3. The knight comes back. We can even play something like knight c5. The pawns are now together. c6 coming, bishop here, bishop here. You're not going to defend against the passed pawns. It's just going to be a long, patient, and painful process. And you see in this game, I showed you that the best way is to remove the blockading rook, right? This pawn is very important. Black cannot attack. Because if we wasted any time at all, like, look, if we went here, right, and black managed to get the knight back, and, black had enough time to consolidate, all of a sudden, black has a very good defensive setup, and it can even bring their king over to stop the pawn. What mattered in this game is we were able to get rid of the blockading rook faster than they were able to set up a defense. And that is very important in the endgame. That is very important. And we see how we just brought the piece, and how we simplified, and how we won this game. As I get to like 12 and 1300, I will probably start recommending you serious openings. One of my favorite recent on Chessly, I just uploaded a course on this, is called the Gotham Gambit. And okay, my opponent's actually playing a Vienna, which is really funny. And the Vienna is one of the best openings in chess, I have to tell you, especially at the amateur level. If I play knight f6, my opponent is going to play the move f4, and I'm just going to be in a very, very bad position. So I like to play symmetrically here. This is the best way to meet the Vienna. Okay, so we have a symmetrical Vienna now with we have a symmetrical four knights game. Of course, we can just follow principles. Play like this. Totally symmetrical. Will white develop the bishop now? What will they do? Bishop b5. Okay. I don't really want to move our bishop to the same exact square, so we can play bishop c5. So now we have a different target, and our next move will be pawn to d6. Okay, nice. So center is nice and protected. Okay, they trade the bishop for the knight. That's an interesting decision. And pawn to d4. Okay. Taking can be bad. That's why we put the pawn there to begin with. And now this knight is attacking c6. Now, many people here, many beginners would just snap this knight off because they're like, I can... No, your bishop's better than the knight. Just don't hang this. How do we defend that? We can defend it with the bishop, or the queen, or the king. But I wouldn't do it with the king. We also don't have to defend it at all. There are some positions where you can sacrifice it, but of course we are not in that business. Let's defend it with the queen. So our bishop could maybe go out here and have a very, very long diagonal. Maybe that's the move here. We also have eyes on this pawn, and they are protecting it. Okay, we're just going to castle. I can also play bishop a6 now, but good principles, all right? Good principles. Typical e4, e5 game. Probably the best move here for white is bishop g5, taking advantage of my misplaced queen. That's just a bad move. So again, my rule is about 85% of the time, going forward is the right move in a position, or at worst, laterally. Because this move just gave me a pawn. There was absolutely no need to move the knight, and they didn't play the bishop out. They haven't moved the bishop yet, and they already moved the knight a second time. Principle violation. Second time, my opponent goes backwards. I'm going to go forward. So now I have all of this pressure. Look at my bishops. This is what I mean by the bishop pair. Looking very nice. The opponent might unpin themselves with rook to e1 and simply blunder that my bishop and knight coordinate on the f2 square. That move is also pretty reasonable. Okay, I still haven't fully developed my pieces, so I'm going to play rook e8 because this can't be a bad move either, right? I'm creating a lot of problems here for white. Okay, c4. It's kind of an interesting move, c4. c4 blocks my bishop. My bishop is sad now. What about pawn trade? Pawn break. We've talked a lot about pawn play. I'm pawn breaking. I'm opening up the center, right? I'm putting pressure on the pawn. Now I could trade the queen, or I could take like this. Honestly, both are okay. Like you could think I'm up material, so let me trade the queen. You could also think let me keep the queen on the board for attacking chances. This trade weakened this knight. And if they now protect it with the rook, they will be blundering bishop takes and bishop takes rook. So white is in a lot of trouble. White did not realize what happened in the position. Hangs a knight, and it's about to be a whole lot worse than that. They're going to go here and blunder this potentially. And now they're going to lose all of their pieces. They're going to lose the knight. They're going to lose the rook. They're going to lose everybody. So we're going to take the knight. Now white is going to be down to 2. They might even lose the next rook. They might take this, and I will play knight to f2 check, knight to f2 check, opening up the rook, attacking the rook. And I'm going to even take this pawn with a check. And if they play king g2, I'm going to attack this bishop with a check. And suddenly, white just doesn't have any material. All of white's pieces just eviscerated in the span of like 7 moves. Every move for the last like 7 out of 10 moves. So like, how did that happen? How did that happen? All of that happened because we just played principled chess. Now, would you have found all of those tactics? Not necessarily. If you had to look at this game and you had to ask yourself, what is the most complicated move that I played that you cannot play in your own games? What's the most complicated move? Maybe you would argue bishop a6. I'll tell you the most complicated move that I played. This pawn trade. It's probably around an 1100-1200 level technique for it to even appear in the brain automatically. Many people in these types of positions are still thinking like, how do I attack something in one move? Instead of how do I coordinate my pieces? Have I gotten all my pieces into the game yet? How do I open up lines for my bishops, etc.? The move d5 is the best move. It's the best move because what it does is it breaks open the center for the bishops on the diagonals and also for the queen. And maybe here, some of you would not have played queen takes. Some of you would have played pawn takes, which, you know. But I like to take with the queen here because it's just a logical move. We are up a pawn, so if we trade the queens, white loses significant counter-attacking chances. Like, we are never going to, we are never going to get mated now. We have very, very strong bishops sniping from the diagonals, right? And again, the principle that was violated was about 85% of the time going backwards is the wrong move. There is no chance that knight ce2 is the best move here. In fact, white has an advantage from the opening. Had white played the move bishop to g5, the threat is very nasty. The threat is to simply take my knight and open up my king for the queen attack, for the knight attack. And look how quickly black can get a dead lost position. Look at this. Look how quickly black can literally lose the game. Lose the game by like checkmate. And you have to be thinking like this. Like, oh, if I go here and take the knight, the king is going to be open because the queen moved. You know what the best move is after bishop to g5? It's not queen e7 defending my knight and then losing this pawn. It's actually moving the knight completely, like backwards, because I don't have a choice. I just said 85% of the time, this is one of those times. Like, I don't have an alternative. The alternative is having a terrible position, and then I would need to develop the rest of my pieces. And that goes to show that in this position, when I had to defend myself, maybe the best move was to do it with the bishop. Or at a minimum, put the bishop over here, so that in the future, I could reopen the bishop. But white actually played very reasonably, you know? White played very, very reasonably here. Maybe white didn't know that they were playing the Vienna. Maybe white did not know the Vienna Gambit. A very, very tricky opening. Tough to play with black if you don't know the Vienna. But what ultimately happened is my opponent went here, and that's just like weird because that's just a free pawn, which I took. And then they went here, which was another backwards move. I'm looking at stuff on f2, but it's generally not a good idea to lose the knight and the bishop for the rook and the pawn. This is almost always a better trade for the person getting the two pieces. So I just moved my bishop, and then I moved my rook. Like, they haven't moved yet. It's funny because in this position, I already have a winning tactic. And I know people like to watch these slow runs and then write in the comments the stuff that I missed as if I'm not the titled player and you're not the student. In this position, I have a tactic, but it's very hard to spot. It's impossible to find at 900. I'm not even sure it's possible to find in the flow of a game at like 1400, to be honest with you. But the tactic is that when I have my knight and bishop pointed at the f2 pawn, it's not just about the f2 pawn itself, it's about the fact that this is a pin. And that means that the g3 square is available to my piece. Because this pawn is here, it would be protecting it, but it's not. And if this knight is gone, it's not guarding this. So the winning tactic here is to take the knight. Very counterintuitive. Because then I have knight to g3. Made possible by all of the positioning of these pieces and the pawn not being on h2. If the pawn was on h2, I wouldn't have this tactic. Now I just pick up an exchange. I pick up a knight for a rook. Spawning a tactic like this in the middle of a game, not easy. Tactics are all patterns. If you've seen it before, you will see it again. If you haven't seen it before, no one's finding bishop e2, knight g3 unless they've seen it before. But this stuff comes to you more naturally. Otherwise, something like, hey, this is blocking my diagonal, can I go d5? That's something that I want you to pick up from these slow runs, right? White's moves, for the last like 7 or 8 moves, created 0 threats or problems to me, so I was able to simply bring out all my pieces, and once the position opened up, they hung a knight, then they hung this, and then literally the position disintegrated. Like, completely disintegrated. And that happens sometimes. That happens when you play several moves in a row that are bad, that give the opponent a totally dominant position. Sometimes it just vaporizes. And that's how chess works. And, you know, it's like a vacuum cleaner. I literally just gobbled up all the pieces. We'll play one more game. I played e4 several times. We can play... I mean, there's many openings. Let's play Nimzo-Larsen. Nimzo-Larsen with b3 and putting the bishop on the diagonal. And then we will develop the rest of our pieces. Maybe my opponent is checking my profile and doesn't want to play me. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes people invite me to chat. It's very funny. Okay, bishop to b2, attacking the pawn. Will my opponent see it? Okay, they did see it. I will now play e3. The idea of e3 is to open the bishop, open the knight. Not open the knight. What am I... Complement the knight, like, so that the knight and the bishop can come out together. So this is a very common way to play with black, as black takes the full center. But in the Nimzo-Larsen, we have a very tricky little opening, where suddenly the knight, the knight was responsible for the defense of the center, and now the knight is gone, and we win the center pawn. This is a very, very, very tricky little opening, because suddenly we're up a pawn, and if this, we will go win another one, and then the rook. So most people... Now we have a 7-point material advantage in 8 moves. There you go. And of course, now the best thing to do is just to quickly... And my opponent just resigns! Folks, there are some openings that are like, even if you're like 1400, I mean, I didn't do anything. I just played the opening, right? I'm just showing you the ideas of the opening. The opponent will oftentimes take the full center and defend it with the knight. It's very principled, but the Larsen is tricky. The Larsen sets up various nastiness, and like everything I've played today, every single opening, I have made material on. I have a B3 course on Nimzo-Larsen. I have Queen's Gambit accepted. A lot of these, it doesn't really matter what opening you play, as long as you know the positions that you're getting afterward. I played that one French where I just showed you, like, you can play openings or you cannot play openings, right? They both can lead to positions where, as long as you're following principles, then, like here, I'm not following principles in the sense like, oh, I didn't develop my knights before my bishops. Yes, because this is an opening, right? And also, this is winning a pawn. And it's kind of crazy how I literally predicted, and that's what happens, you know? And what black should have played instead of bishop d7 is black should have played bishop d6, stabilizing the center first, then developing the rest of the pieces. But you lose a game like this sometimes, you're like, what just happened? And that happens, you know? I want to play one more game. Let's play one more. Let's play one more Nimzo-Larsen. And it would be, oh my gosh, are we going to win the bishop? Okay, no. I thought there was a chance, maybe. Now I will show you. Well, no, I don't want you. I don't want you all to play like this. But let's just develop some pieces. The best line is to take and then set up your pieces in a certain way. But what happens if we just play an opening where we don't take the center for a while? We just put our bishops on the corners like this. Fianchetto, both of them, they're opening on the diagonals. We play very kind of passive chess, like everything on the third rank here. We castle our king like this, like nothing's happening. Nobody's crossing the line. Four bishops have been in the corners. Like, we still have to play chess ultimately, right? So even if there's no openings and it's something that we've never played before, let us stick to principles. Let us try to... Okay, that move went there. Okay, I can take, but it's defended. I haven't developed my other knight, but I also want to take some space in the center. So let's start by moving some pawns into the middle first, and then developing our knight. And it's okay if we block our bishop. We don't really have a choice. The alternative is to put the knight like this or something. Okay, we go to the center. Let's go. Maybe black is going to long castle, and that will give us information. That will give us some information. Right now, black's king is in the middle, so we don't really know where we want to attack. Okay, black castles this way, which means we're going to have a very aggressive game. We need to attack on opposite sides. Let's push in the center and make the knight move, and then maybe let's go start a pawn storm. Because this is how you have to play when the kings are on opposite sides. Otherwise, black is going to do that to us. Knight to a5, interesting move. So if I push, nothing's happening, right? There's nothing there. If I play b4, the knight takes me. So why don't I prepare the move b4 by defending the pawn on c4? It doesn't look like I have a threat, but I am setting up the move pawn to b4, trapping the knight. Now, I can ignore this, I think, because if I were to take, the knight would be able to come back. I can also maybe reinforce my center, but I really like this move, and that's how you trap a piece. You use logic. You want to trap the piece, but it would have a move if you attacked it with a pawn. So all of a sudden, the knight is gone, just, right? And my opponent sacrifices the knight, which actually makes some sense. I can take it, right? So they're going to get 2 pawns. I think that's quite a reasonable deal for them. Now my knight is hanging. I would like to take, but I can't. I can take this, but then my own rook would be hanging. So let's just keep it very simple and just move the knight back and totally out of danger. We are still castled on opposite sides. The best move for black is undoubtedly h5, g5. Black is now down a piece, and we have castle. And see, they're not doing that. So they are not playing the best way. They're trying to take this pawn, which makes sense. Like, I don't know why I can't just defend it with my pawn. Alternatively, I can give a check, but that doesn't do anything. Knight to d4, they just take this pawn. If I move my queen to defend, my queen stops guarding the knight. Important to see that. Let's just go a3. There is nothing complicated about what black did. They just attack my pawn. Black is still not playing on this side. And when you don't understand how to play, and they are playing on the completely wrong side. Not even they're not playing on the they're opening the king, which is not good, right? This is just not good. Having said that, it's not like a completely terrible move. I mean, if I take this pawn, they want to take on b2. So I can play maybe something like a rook c1, pinning the pawn to the king. I think black is going to just play. Oh my goodness. Into the middle. Okay, let's attack the queen. Hopefully it just goes here and gets lost. Coming in here would be very, very dangerous, but maybe not super terrible. We can take. Whoa. When you see something like this, you need to have an alert in your brain. Like, is that queen trapped? Like, if I go b5, is the queen trapped? And I gotta tell you, yes. This is why you should solve puzzles. Because there is just no way the queen can be safe there. And suddenly, yeah, it's gone. It's gone. And these little alerts in your brain have to go off. You see my opponent actually played a very decent opening, but did not understand the demands of the position. When you don't understand the demands of a position, you will oftentimes put your pieces on bad squares. An opponent resigns. You'll put your pieces on bad squares. This actually began with the knight going to a5. You'll see how interesting this is. So look, black castled queenside. This position is better for white. It's only better for white if white finds the right continuation. If white does not, if white plays slowly, suddenly it's minus 0.8, plus 0.8. If black then starts a kingside attack, and white continues to play slowly, like a3, black is now better. Black has arrived first. If you then proceed to take this pawn, the advantage is now minus 0.7, right? And on and on and on. The advantage here is plus 1.3 if I start the attack first. And so what I did is I kicked the knight away from the position because I made it difficult for black. Is black going to go this way and abandon the king? Is black going to try to block my attack? Black went here. Watch the evaluation after knight a5. Plus 3. Because this knight cannot stop an avalanche. I have a very famous saying on this channel. You cannot stop an avalanche with a horse. I said that years ago. You cannot stop an avalanche with a horse. It's not possible. I don't know if anybody's tried that. It's a pretty stupid idea. Point is, if I went b4, now I'm just not doing well. What's crazy is that not only am I still doing okay, I have an advantage because, which is just so crazy. Like, this knight is still so badly positioned and it's under attack everywhere. Okay, queen b3 would be a fork, but my attack is still faster. That's what the computer is banking on. The attack. Rook c1, a4, all this attacking stuff. Very instructive. But the alternative that I wanted to play was bishop c3. I wanted to remove the knight and then start the attack. But then I was like, wait a minute. Isn't the knight trapped? In this little video, we learned we trapped 2 pieces. We trapped the knight and we trapped the queen. In this game, not this video. Knight b4, knight c4. So chess is a very logical game. I just want to put my knight or queen and guard this pawn. And that's what I did. And still, the best move here for black is to play h5. And still the best move here for black is to play h5. Queen b5 is wrong, and the move c5 is bananas, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's not a terrible move, but black never started in it, and king d7 is just outlandish. You have to put the king in the corner. You have to. You cannot be putting your king into the middle of the board. This is a recipe for disaster. Now, if my opponent had went like queen d3, what I would have looked for here is forcing moves. And as a result of the move queen to d3, I actually can play queen to a4 check. And then I can take this pawn and I can eat everybody. If you don't find this move, you might be tempted to make a queen trade, which is actually a very reasonable thing to do because you are up material, and then you would be attacking the center with the knight, the bishop, the rook, the pawn, the knight. You would have this diagonal open whenever you need it, and black is just down a piece. Ultimately, if you're down a piece, like, you will lose in many positions, right? You will not be able to survive a position where you just have the same pieces, but one person has more. This was a very interesting episode. Because on the one hand, we had players playing extremely well. Like that game that made it to the endgame, that player probably is the strongest. But this player, the last player that I played, clearly likes imbalanced games. And in these weird, unorthodox structures, if you mishandle this, you can lose very easily. Very, very easily. Because the tactics are not very normal, you know? The game against the player who played white, and it was the 4 knights, that person just played a normal opening and then started going backwards, did not improve all of their pieces, blundered a pawn, and then their position disintegrated because they made a tactical mistake. And there's a lot of different ways to play the game. But hopefully, every episode I'm giving you more and more little information. I'm giving you cool opening ideas to try and then, learn and go above and beyond. And yeah, Slowrun episode 17 is finished, and we are almost 1,000. And in the next episode, we will cross it. That's all I have for you today. Get out of here.